Welcome to this week's edition of the Construction CPA's Coffee Cafe. I am the Construction CPA, Lisa Raish. We are dropping the hammer on cash flow problems so you can build things that matter. So, welcome to the second week of our 8-week cash flow pro topic. And so this week we are going to be forecasting like a pro. So we're going to forecast your cash flow like a pro this week. So let's talk about what that means. I know we've talked about cash flow here before. It is going to be the lifeblood of your business. So very typical in construction is you're going to have cash flow crunches. You're going to have periods where there's less money coming in than there is money going out. And that is super typical in the industry just due to the lag time that comes with when customers typically pay. So this is when you're scrambling to cover payroll on Friday, right? The payments related to the jobs just don't line up to when the expenses are going out the door. And so that's the reason why you want to actually predict or attempt to predict where those dollars are going to come in and go out or ebb and flow. All right. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first, why does it matter? The reality is that revenue and cash flow are not the same thing, right? And too often, I think there's an assumption that it is. Well, I have the revenues, but the dollars haven't necessarily come in the door. There's going to be a timing issue. So just because you have a number of projects running right now and you've got a strong pipeline and you've got a number of projects coming after the fact, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you have money in the bank today or that you'll have money in the bank tomorrow. So again, revenue and cash flow are not the same thing, right? When we forecast it, we give ourselves some visibility into what we think is going to happen and therefore have a level of control over what will happen if we can do that forecasting. Now, forecasting is not necessarily going to be perfect. It's not going to be exact, but it gives you a look into what you think is going to happen so you can make decisions based off of what you believe is going to happen, right? So your biggest problems, honestly, are going to come in the next 30 days or maybe the next 30 to 60 days. So that's why we forecast your cash out 30 to 60 days. We want to know before it's going to happen. I want to know 3 weeks out that I have a problem. I have a shortage of cash, right? So then I can maybe make adjustments at that point. It gives you a little bit of lead time to fix those things. So you're not walking blind into Monday morning, I don't have money for payroll on Friday. While we don't want to see you with cash flow shortages, if you can see those shortages 3 or 4 weeks out in advance, there might be some wiggle room that you have and some things that you can do. So again, that's the reason why, that is the key idea why we want to forecast. It gives us some leeway to actually make revisions to something we're going to do in the future. So let's talk about some real things that you can actually do, right? So tip number 1, you're going to want to map out the cash coming in and the cash going out. So this is where you're going to look at all of your projects. You're going to list all of the client payments that you have, and you want to map out where you think you're going to get paid. Now, you may have, say, 30 days terms on your invoice. But is it real that you're actually going to get paid on all of those invoices in 30 days? You may have done business with somebody previously, and you've learned over time that, you know what, they actually pay you in 40 days, right? Instead of the 30. So if that's the case, that's where you start to look at, okay, what do you have out there in receivables? Who owes you money? Where do I actually think I'm going to get paid? By the project and the timing of actually getting paid. So if that invoice you expect to get paid in 40 days, then you want to put that out at 40 days and not the 30 that you have on the terms of your invoice, right? That's where the little bit of the tweaks in the cash flow comes. Because we want to make assumptions that not everybody's going to pay us on time. Maybe you might get somebody to pay you early. But again, where do you think the money is going to come in, how many days, how far out, the projects you have going? I'm X through a project right now. I expect we're going to be through this next milestone in 2 weeks. That means we'll invoice. So where do I think I'm going to get that invoice? Where do I think I'm going to collect it? And then you map it out that way. Now we want to take our outflows, right? What money is going out the door every week? So a lot of times in construction, people are paid weekly. So, okay, I've got some headcount dollars. I got some payroll dollars that I know are going to go out every week, and it's going to be X dollars every week. I might have sub payments. So there might be sub payments related to the projects that I'm working on. When are those sub payments going to be due? Is there any overhead cost? You have your monthly rent, right? The rent is due the first of the month. Are you using various subscriptions in the business, right? You're using a project management system, right? There's expenses for that pop up. You have your insurance, right? Your monthly payment for your insurance is due on a specific day. That's where now you want to take all the dollars going out the door and we want to map those out. Same as we did the dollars coming in. First of the month is rent. Okay, right here on week 1 and then week 5. And then payroll is every week. Well, on average, my headcount costs every week are X dollars. Okay, that's the dollars going out. And we get paid on Friday, but it sweeps out from the payroll service on Thursday. So I want to make sure that I have them, I have it listed there, right? You're mapping the dollars in and out. When do I think my money's going to come in? When do I think my money's going to go out? And all you're simply doing is taking a sum, usually by the week, to see where at the close of the week, where do I think I'm going to fall at the close of the week? And that's where you're just simply looking at the shortages, right? So it gives you a big picture of where you think things are going to be. I'm going to be good for 3 weeks. On the fourth week, we're going to get a little tight. Is there somebody or something in that fourth week I could push out to week 5 so that I can have a little bit left over as I go into week 5, because there's an expectation of dollars coming in week 5, right? So again, you can look at where your gaps are or where your crunch periods are, or I've got 2 or 3 weeks where it's actually tight. What can I do? Can I push anything out? Can I try and get a client to pay earlier, right? Give them some sort of early payment terms, something, right? It gives you the ability to actually look to see what you think is going to happen and make some adjustments to that. Another thing that you can do, kind of tip number 2, is there are always going to be construction specific variables that you need to take into consideration, right? So your retainage, you've got to build that into your forecasts, because that's going to be delayed cash to you. That's not dollars coming to you right now. So when are those going to come to you? Okay. That is important to consider too. It's not just, oh, I have an invoice out for X. No, is there retainage? Again, there's going to be expenses associated with that are going to have to go out in advance, but you need to build that in because that's going to be delayed cash to you. Change orders, right? We've talked about change orders on here before. Do not assume that they're approved and then just bill them. You want to make sure that there's a clear indication from the client that they know there's a change order, they've approved the change order, you're doing the work, and then you bill the work right away, right? But you need to factor that in. So there are going to be additional costs that'll go out the door for that. And then, okay, there's going to be an additional invoice. Where is that going to get invoiced and where do we think that's going to get paid? Right? So that's specific to the industry. It's not necessarily something you're going to see in other industries. So again, take into account your change orders. Are you in are you in a part of the country where it's very seasonal, right? And for our clients who are in more northern states, it tends to slow down over the winter. Business might not entirely stop, but it slows. So if there is seasonality associated with what you're doing, are you adjusting for that? So in those slower months, you still are going to have operational costs that are going to need to get paid regardless of whether or not you have a lot of work. So now are you taking that into consideration in your busier periods, right? Typically, again, in your summer months where it's busier, your cash flow is more robust. So now what are you doing? You're building in what we've talked about before, is building in that rainy day fund, right? You're thinking about that because the seasonality becomes an issue for you. I need that rainy day fund. I need that slush fund because in the winter, when it gets quieter, we don't have as much work. I still have so much operational overhead dollars don't go away. So your takeaway here is your forecast needs to reflect a construction business and your construction business's patterns. For our clients who are in southern states who tend to work more consistently throughout the year, their seasonality may not be as significant as, say, a client who's in a northern part of the country. So we take that into consideration when we're building out those forecasts. Now we get clients who are in southern states. They also have other issues where they could have parts of the summertime where there are weather related stoppages, right? There are things like that that happen all the time. That is construction specific. And so you want to factor that into your forecasting. Tip number 3, this is something you need to do every week. You need to review it and you need to update it weekly because it is going to change. Maybe somebody paid you early that you didn't think they were going to pay you early, or you thought they would pay you in 40 days and they actually paid you in the 30 days, right? So you've collected that cash now. So you're taking that out of your future week assumptions. Have you gotten an indication from someone that it's actually going to take them longer to pay you? So you thought it would be 30 days and now it's going to be 45 days. So you're moving your payment out in that forecast. Now it's going to be the same thing with your expenses. You know what? I'm a little bit short here. Is there somebody I can push out a week, right? Those are the things that you want to look at. A forecast is not a set it and forget it type of thing. It's a dynamic item that is changing consistently week over week over week, depending on what's going on in your business. Maybe you've had a project that's actually slowed down. There may have been something happening at our project and the project has slowed. So all the assumptions you had related to that project, revenues that you're going to collect, as well as dollars going out the door for expenses, may have changed. So now you need to change those assumptions. So again, we want to base on actual payments and any new expenses that we may have received, right? This is not necessarily big outside of 30, 60, 90, no, way out there expectations. This is the real things you have on your receivable list, the real things you have on your payable list, right? So your takeaway here is that this is a living and breathing forecast. And this can help you determine earlier in your process that you may in fact have a shortage. And that's what we're looking to do, is get ahead of the surprise of, oh no, it's Monday morning. I don't have enough money to pay this week's bills. While again, we don't want to see you with any shortages, I want to know 3, 4, 5 weeks out in advance that I have a potential for a shortage 5 weeks out. And therefore I can make adjustments to that. Tip number 4 is use tools to make it simple, right? I do not want to see people complicate things. So when it comes to a forecast, in some cases, we still do forecasting for clients on a spreadsheet. Why? Because we can usually throw together a very quick and dirty back of the envelope forecast for a client on a spreadsheet. It is the easiest way to kind of forecast that out, especially if you're small. Now, as you get larger, your entity gets larger, the business is more complex, you have more moving pieces and parts. There are going to be forecasting tools in accounting softwares. There are going to be cash flow apps that are available. There are various automations that are out there. So yes, as you get larger and more complex, you're going to want to probably explore one of those tools. But I'm going to tell you, there are times where I do a quick and dirty spreadsheet just to give a client an idea of where we think the cash is going to ebb and flow. And in many cases, it gets us to where we need to be because we can forecast that out. So your takeaway here is your best tool to use is one you're actually going to use, one you're going to use consistently. And so if using a spreadsheet is what it is for you, then use the spreadsheet. And as long as you're using it consistently, that's the most important thing. Instead of having a fancy accounting tool that you're not using at all and you have no idea what's going on, use what works for you. It has to work in your business. Just because your colleague uses one way or another doesn't mean it's the right way for you, right? So it's not a one size fits all like many things in business. Just because you have a friend or a colleague or someone who's actually utilizing a tool doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing for you. So Let's just kind of recap what we talked about, right? So when we're forecasting, it's going to be the dollars that you actually expect to come in the door and then the dollars that you expect to go out the door. It's cash inflows and outflows, right? You want to think about your retainage because that's one of the things that many people don't actually consider when they're figuring out their forecasting and also can get you caught up because that can create a cash shortage for you. There are also delays in projects. So you want to factor in delays in a project. You may have a project moving smoothly right now, and then all of a sudden something in that project stops. And now all the work that you're doing has stopped or almost entirely stopped. So you need to adjust your forecast to factor in that stoppage because the dollars coming in and the dollars going out related to that project might not actually happen over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. It might got pushed out to week 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? So those are things that you want to think about. You need to update your cash flow forecasting weekly. This is not a set it and forget it type of thing. It's a dynamic tool you want to continue to look at. Weekly religiously becomes part of your overall report reviewing process on a weekly basis. And if you want to and you're inclined to, use automated tools. Again, we use spreadsheets a lot of times for clients because we can get to a quick and dirty number quickly and help them realize like what's actually going on. But if you're in a larger, more complex entity, you probably are going to want some type of automation. But you want to use a tool that you are actually going to use, not buying a tool that you don't use and you have no idea what's going on. So listen, if you already are doing a cash flow, I'd love to hear it. Like drop that in the chat, like, hashtag cash flow forecast. I'd like to know that you're doing it. But if you're not, like this week is the week to start, right? It's the end of the week. So you know what? We run our forecast because we're going to forecast out what we think is going to happen next week over the next, 4 weeks, right? Start small, 4 to 8 weeks. That gets you clear on what's going to happen in the most, current, like the future, most close subsequent future for you, right? This isn't 6, 7, 8 months out the road. This is the next 3, 4 weeks where, again, you can run into some challenges. So again, even a simple spreadsheet will get there, but you've got to go and you've got to make sure that you're tracking it on a weekly basis. So again, if there's anything, I also want to know if there's something holding you back, right? Is there something that is just holding you back from doing a cash flow forecast? Drop it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'll give you any pointers or any tips that we can. And yeah, let's just get everyone doing a simple cash flow forecast on a weekly basis so they're not surprised on Monday morning when they go to run payroll and they don't have enough cash to do so, because that's definitely not something that's a really tough hurdle to get over because that's a really significant cash crunch. So, and next session, so next week, so we're in the second week right now, but next week, the third week, we're going to be talking about speeding up your collections because that is a big problem too. Construction is riddled with collection problems. So let's talk about different ways that we can help you get your money a little bit quicker. As always, we look forward to seeing you here every Friday. Follow us here on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We are at The Construction CPA on all of the above. I look forward to seeing you here every week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.